Everyone, sorry, I wanted to just take a minute to set up the doggo camera because I realized I did not get a chance to do that. I'm gonna see where she's gonna end up. Her dog bed's on like the other side of the couch, which I think is where she's currently headed. Oh no, maybe she's not. She's been hanging out in front of the window a lot today. Let me see if I can adjust that. Let's see here. There we go. She's hanging out in front of the window. What are you doing, doggo? Hanging out by the window? My goodness. What are we doing all the way over there? Can I make that be closer? I don't know. It's probably about as close as I can get it. So there you go. Hanging out. Doggo camera is back. She also just got groomed. She's like extra fluffy right now, and it's super adorable. Anyways, how is everyone? I know it's been a minute since we have streamed. And yes, Bandit camera is here. I don't think I had it set up last time. I had barely gotten together all of my other cable management stuff, and I just did not take the time to set up the actual dog camera. And to be fair, I definitely need to redo the cable management, but I have not made it a priority because I've been at a convention and it was Easter and, you know, all of the other stuff. So hopefully the next 2 weeks I'm planning on getting that done. All right, so since it has been a minute, let's go ahead and go over some things. So hi, hello, my name is Evie Lupine, and here on Fridays we do a little interactive BDSM and kink Q&A. Today's potential topics, I thought we could talk about kink events and Edgeplay and just general stuff, but you guys can come in and ask whatever you feel like asking about. If it's on that topic or something entirely different, totally up to you. The only thing that I ask is that you please be at least 18 if you are participating in the chat. Please read the rules down below. We have a whole FAQ down there. These days, I don't tend to get repeats of the same questions over and over again, but like back in the day for sure, I'd get like the same 3 questions all the time of like, how do I tell my partner I want to be a submissive? Where can I buy a collar from? You know, that kind of thing. Those are answered down below, but please read it. Familiarize yourself. Just don't spam the chat. I answer questions in the order they come in. Respect what the mods say, and more or less you're good. I don't give mental health advice, medical advice, so if you're like, is this bruise concerning? Can I do kink if I have DID? I don't know. Maybe. Probably not. I don't know. I'm not a mental health professional. Not really my call to make. So that is what you need to know to get started. So that's about it. That's what you need to know. I am going to try to focus on some questions here today. Also, I have been posting a little bit more on Instagram. I like go back and forth if I'm like, I want to be like on Instagram. I've been posting stories on there. I think I'm probably going to have like an idea for a story maybe I want to do over the weekend, and like some things I'm going to post over there. So I'm doing that. I am also, just while we're at the top here, I'll briefly mention this. I am doing an online summit. I believe my time was on April 10th, but from April 8th to 11th, we are doing a virtual summit, and we're doing little like mini classes from people like me, Midori, Sunny Megatron, Justine Cross. I think Lee Harrington is involved too, from what I've seen. So lots of good people teaching all different classes, from like developing your identity as a findom to what I'm talking about, which I'm going to be doing a class on polyamory and BDSM. There's one on female-led relationships. There's all kinds of classes. So if you want to check that out, I recommend it. It's free to attend. And if you would like to reserve your spot. You can go to domsubdynamics.com/EV, and then you can reserve your slot for attending the summit. There's also options for VIP stuff. There's tons of bonus material that's being included this year, just like last year, with extra recorded classes, supplementary material, text guides, ebooks, discount codes for other classes, lots of stuff in there. So if you want to check it out, please do. It's free. And yeah, that's that. I love doing online stuff. I love doing online classes, especially like free online classes. I like keeping education accessible. I mean, obviously I have a YouTube channel, and I don't like keeping a lot of education behind a paywall, and like functionally I do sometimes because there's topics you can't really talk about on YouTube, but as much as possible, I like to make things open for everyone. So that is that on that. There you go, if you want to check it out. And let's get in to some questions. I don't know why it's like not actually letting it be a link. I don't know why that's happening. Sometimes YouTube gets mad at me and is like, actually, we're not letting you post links anymore. You've been banned from posting links. Ooh, lemonade and cocoa. That's how you know it's spring, is when you're doing both. Ooh, chips and vegan chili sounds good. I haven't decided what I'm gonna have for dinner. I need to pick up groceries, but they were supposed to be ready before the stream, but they're not actually ready. So I'm gonna have to pop up after stream and like go pick up my groceries. Do you know any publication companies that are open to receiving fictional stories regarding kink? Oh, I don't know. I feel like that's like a really old school thing. That kind of reminds me of like an old, like adult magazine thing, like user submitted erotica and user submitted like this thing really happened to me type stories. I can't think of any off the top of my head. The one that comes to mind is a company that I've worked with before to make video content, which is Zipper Magazine. They might be looking for text-based submissions. I don't know if that would fit their criteria for what they're looking for, but it's called Zipper Magazine. Sunny Megatron runs it. That would be my only guess, but I never got into like blogging or anything. I've never done, what would that be exactly? Like freelance, like article writing? I've never done that before. It's like not my world. I've been interested in that because I don't know how people live doing like freelance writing. I'm like, wait, how does that, like, do you actually make money doing that? So I don't know, but that would be my guess. I'm worried that the type of men I like wouldn't make good romantic partners. My question is, how can I make a healthy relationship work while still having that toxic type of man? Ooh, that's interesting. I really like breaking down and trying to analyze what it is that we find attractive about people and like where that comes from. Because there's this, I don't know if this is an adage necessarily or like a saying that people go to, but it certainly is true that a lot of people will be attracted to folks that they swear up and down. They're like, I would never be into a person like that. Or maybe they have like a parental figure or an adult figure in their life growing up that had certain traits they found as a child to be very undesirable and to be a negative in their life, right? Like somebody who's not emotionally available, somebody who's always away for work, somebody who's cold and distant or is really emotionally volatile. We think, oh, I'm never going to want to be with somebody like that. Obviously, that was really bad and really toxic. I hate that in a person. And then when you stop and think about it, you sometimes find, ooh, actually, there's a pattern here. And a lot of my partners have that one trait. Where could that be coming from? And oftentimes it is from this pattern we've developed of like something that we really dislike actually ended up becoming a pattern that we sort of like seek out in our relationships. And the reason for why that happens, I want to be very clear, at least for the model that I put the most stock in. The reason why that happens is, oh, Bendita has disappeared. behind the couch. I'll have to figure out a way to get the camera over there. But the reason why that happens is not because, you know, like the red pill belief that like women are like secretly attracted to like the dark triad, and like women are all universally really into like Machiavellian, you know, narcissistic whatever people. Like no, it's not like that there's any sort of like, oh, you're biologically attracted to people that are bad for you. But the environment that we grew up in and the things that we see modeled in our childhood are really influential to us as we grow up. And so even if we know that something is like toxic, negative, bad, wrong, hurts us, not a positive we want to have in our lives, because it feels familiar, that feels good. And we know that familiar breeds attraction, right? Proximity, familiarity increases the likelihood that we will be attracted to someone. This is why you have people that maybe are like, you know, not roommates necessarily, but like classmates for a long period of time. And then slowly, just because they've sat next to each other in class for a year, they start to develop more of attraction, you know, to each other because they've had conversations, they're close, so on and so forth. So that can both be a positive, because that means that we're more attracted to our partners the more that we spend time with them, the more that we're close with them. But it also means that things that maybe are toxic and bad feel familiar, and that feels good. So it's about identifying, okay, what are these things that I am calling toxic, that are bad for me, that I don't want to necessarily have in future relationships? Can I more consciously choose to not pursue people like that, and even just see what it's like? Because if you have a really strong pattern of like, all of my ex-partners have this one trait, right? Like they're really emotionally unavailable, they always cheat on me. Maybe you go towards the opposite. I feel like there's like a Seinfeld episode about this. I have a vague memory of something where I think it's George decides to just like do the opposite of what his instinct would be, and then like everything works out. And sometimes I feel like you got to do that. And I'm not saying to date people that you're not attracted to, but take a little bit more of a chance matching with somebody, talking to somebody that maybe doesn't give off the typical vibes that you would be attracted to, and maybe see how that goes. But I realize that's like not really necessarily your question, because your question is more like, can you make a healthy relationship work while having like that toxic kind of person? And I think it depends on the degree of toxicity you're talking about, because I've gone back to this a couple of times. Let's just go back to the person who is not emotionally available at all. The person that like, oh, I always have to work late, I'm always out traveling for business, you know, I gotta, you know, have drinks after work with, you know, my coworkers. They're just like not available for texting, they don't really want to call you. There's the extreme version of that where you're constantly being breadcrumbed along, and like you maybe have a conversation with them like once a week, and that's not what you want at all, versus maybe a degree of that that's like, oh, well, they're not really available during the workday, and like scheduling something is hard, but we at least talk, you know, a couple times a week. We have like a solid date night once a week, and they're still sort of that distant and unavailable, but it's been compromised on enough to where it's not making a relationship that is healthy functionally and possible. And again, because it depends on sort of like what traits you're talking about, how much compromise is available for that type of person varies. If you're looking at somebody maybe who has like what we would term anger management issues, right? Like they have impulse control issues, they, you know, blow up at the drop of a hat, you know, they're yelling, they're screaming, everything's always your fault. That's like the kind of thing you're attracted to. It's probably really, really hard to have a healthy relationship with a person like that, because they're probably not going to want to or be able to compromise on that really problematic behavior, because it takes a lot of work to get through all of that. It's like their normal habituated response to emotional distress is to blow up and be angry. It takes a lot of work to get through that. So the answer is like maybe, but it's about finding it in degrees of what you would normally be attracted to. Like, for example, talking about attachment styles, right? Like if you're somebody who is normally attracted to more avoidant attachment styles, you can make a relationship work with somebody who has avoidant attachment if you know that's what they have and you're both aware of it and you choose to work through it. But they have to be the kind of person that you can have a conversation with and be able to tell them point blank, hey, I really like you, I want to be in a relationship with you, but when we have this kind of interaction or when this kind of thing happens, I feel like this. I want to work towards having a relationship where we don't feel that way as often. This is what I'm thinking. Can we work on this together? If you can't have that conversation, it's probably not really going to work out. So, yes. You saying toxicity made me be urged to leave this stream to listen. Luckily, the partners in the other room is going to put it on for me. Yes. Well. That would be my take on that. But good question. The book that I really like, well, there's a couple, but the book that I really like as a reference point for this, for like understanding relationship patterns, oldie but a goodie, book I recommend all the time, is The Erotic Mind by Jack Moran. It does a really good job of both explaining things like fetishes and sexual turn-ons, but also like, why is it, you know, if you're the person who is always going after married men, like, why is that? Like, why are you constantly pursuing unavailable people? Let's figure it out. We can talk about this. And I want to say the book Hot and Unbothered, which is by, she has sort of a weird name. It's like, what is the author's name? Hot and Unbothered. Yana, oh, right. Yana Talon Hicks. I remember the Talon Hicks, and I was like, is it Talon Yana Hicks? I was like transposing some parts of the name there. That one, I think, that's a really good overview of a lot of things about sex and relationships and communication, but it also goes into like understanding and breaking down patterns too. And I think those are two really, really good resources. There's a lot of like, especially more recent published self-help, sexuality, and relationship books that I think are going in this direction of like understanding those patterns, because like they're real and they're you don't want to necessarily get rid of something that you're attracted to, but part of it is also, if you learn that you are like deserving of certain things in a relationship, you may naturally find yourself less attracted to certain traits over time, because if you, let's say for example, you are the person who always pursues married men who aren't really that available because you actually have this like internal schema that you are not worthy of long-term love. And so you're like subconsciously pursuing these relationships that are doomed to fail because you're never really going to be picked in them, because married men very rarely actually leave their spouses, if you didn't know that. And when you learn that, you have control over it, and you help develop your own self-esteem and start to work those issues that maybe caused you to develop this pattern, you may naturally kind of soften that and let it go a little bit and go, yeah, I mean, I like kind of the idea of somebody who's maybe like more distant or taboo. And you can find other ways to play with that taboo. That's not just like pursuing the married guy, right? All right, it's a good question to start off with. That was like a very interesting one for my brain to noggin on. Great post earlier this week and lovely photos as well. You are so welcome. Happy Friday too. Hello, long time no see indeed. Hope you are doing well. Not a kink party, but I'm thinking of hosting a vampire-themed birthday party. Ooh. Any ideas for decor, food, or games on a budget for around 30 people? Oh, that's such a good one. I mean, I guess it depends on like how Halloween-y you want it to be. Because it definitely can go into like corny Halloween party vampire territory, or like, do you want like serious, like Anne Rice novel, like luxurious, elegant, serious vampire birthday party? Because there's sort of like the I want to drink your blood, like that kind of silly stuff, and then like real serious stuff. I would say for, the thing that keeps coming back to my mind is like a really fancy punch bowl. And I know that they make like pretty like fancy cut out like plastic goblets and servingware these days that kind of are made to look like crystal. I feel like that's probably a good option for a budget. Having a general theme of like red foods, I feel like would be fun, you know, like strawberries, but if they're like dipped in chocolate, it's like white chocolate that you've like colored to be like a dark pink or a red color, you know, or like Swedish, like just red everything, right? It's like Swedish fish. Obviously the punch bowl has to be red. You know, something like a beet entree for the vegetarians and the vegans, because those are also naturally dark red. Um, and, maybe a little like a steak tartare or something, or maybe like a seared tuna. This is like getting way too expensive for like, if you're doing seared ahi for 30 people, it's not going to be a cheap party, I don't think. I don't know. I haven't bought meat in like probably 5 years, so I don't really know how much tuna costs these days. But that would be kind of what I would look for, is that kind of thing. I do wonder about like games though, and like decor. It's like too late for there to be like leftover Halloween stuff, and too early for there to be Halloween stuff available at Party City, I imagine. I'm trying to think what I've seen. Like, I don't go to parties that much, like normie, like vanilla house parties. I'm like, what do people normally do for like decor? I do really like, actually, on Amazon, you can get like a pretty good sized bundle of like 20 or 30 like flickering battery powered candles. They'll last you forever. Love having them on hand if there's a power outage. They're pretty inexpensive. Those are really good for mood lighting, where you don't have to actually worry about having 30 candles burning in your house simultaneously. I feel like that's a really good one. Um, I kind of want to rewatch, now that you said this, I would almost rewatch like the What We Do in the Shadows episodes where they've tried to throw a party, and be like, what have they talked about like doing for a game? I feel like anything with like dry ice would probably be cool, like doing kind of a vampire version of like bobbing for apples, where like you have to do it while wearing like fake vampire teeth or something, and instead of it being an apple, it's like a giant gummy shaped like a heart, like I don't know how easy that would be to get, but you probably could get like an anatomically correct heart mold, and then you could do like some kind of like set gelatin thing, or like some kind of really firm set jelly you could use for that, or even you could probably do chocolate too. That would be a lot of chocolate though for the size I'm thinking of to do like an apple bobbing thing with. Or you could just do a red apple and kind of do a little, this is more Snow White, I feel like, to do with an apple. But that's sort of where my brain goes for sure. Good question. Good evening. I want to make friends at my local dungeon and play parties, but I have social anxiety. Do you have any tips for overcoming it in that setting? Yes, absolutely. I will get to that in a moment. I think I'm gonna just, are we gonna talk about the Tantric Sex Islander cult? We didn't get to finish watching it yet. But, yeah, it was, yeah. Very Halloweeny and serious at the same time, question mark. Okay, all of the things. Yeah, I feel like dry ice is probably good. I'm thinking of like, I'm like, how would you make like a vampire? I don't know. When I grew up, I feel like pinatas were a really big deal. But now that I live in the Pacific Northwest, like no one ever has pinatas. I feel like you get like a really cool, like, Halloween pinata. Or you get like a pinata of like a human, and then you could fill it full of like Halloween like gummy candies and stuff, and like more vampire or Halloween themed candies that are like traditional birthday candies. And I don't know, I just feel like that would be fun, I guess. Oh, the vampire equivalent of like pin the tail on the donkey. Because I'm like, well, you could do like pin the stake on the vampire, and then you have to like stake them in the neck. But I feel like that's like, if you're being vampires at the party, you're not gonna want to stake another vampire. So what would the vampire do? It'd be like pin the fangs on the victim at the dance club, I guess. I guess that would be that's like kind of a mouthful to say though, but that's where my brain goes. I would also, especially if you're open to having it be a little bit more like kinky at all, like have people that are like vampire thralls that are going as like humans to like assist like serving the appetizers and stuff. I feel like would do a lot to really like sell the theme. Definitely darker colors, mood lighting, have color changing bulbs, or like red bulbs. You can get those like really cheap from like Home Depot if you're just only getting the color red. Replace your bulbs with those temporarily, get some flickering candles. And I feel like even without actually having to have a whole lot of like decor, like streamers or bunting or anything, I feel like that would do a lot just kind of on its own to give the vibe. I don't know. How much does it cost to rent a fog machine? Are those expensive? don't know. I've never actually seen a kink party use a fog machine before, and I feel like that's kind of a missed opportunity, to be entirely honest. Okay, so let's talk about overcoming anxiety going to parties, because I feel like that is definitely a big one that a lot of people struggle with. I have some old videos, God, they're probably like 6 years old at this point, where I talk about dealing with anxiety going to play parties. And I don't remember from the chat if it said, let me see if I can see what the super chat said. Okay, good, I can still read it. I want to make friends at my local dungeon and play parties, but I have social anxiety. Do you have any tips for overcoming that in that setting? So I don't know if you've been to your local dungeon yet. I'm going to assume, based on what you said, that you haven't been yet. So I'm going to let you in on a really big secret, okay? This is like the most well-kept secret about BDSM. And our biggest, most well-kept secret about kink is that we're all fucking nerds, okay? We're all big fucking nerds. Big ol' nerds. To the letter. All of us are, pretty much. About different things, right? Some of us are really into tabletop games. Some of us are really into Ren Fair stuff. Some of us are really into, like, I don't know, like that kind of like Facebook F yeah, science is cool, like type thing, whatever you would call that. Amateur non-professional science enthusiasm. Anything like that kinky people are probably into. There's a lot of people that are really into like different fandoms, anime, My Little Pony at one point I remember being like fairly popular, especially with littles. So you get lots of people that are into different things really passionately. I have never, as somebody, I don't really have social anxiety, but as somebody that never really felt like, I fit in any social groups fully when I was growing up. I moved a lot. It was hard to like maintain friendships moving as often as I did. And I never really felt like I fully fit anywhere. And like I would try and I would get along with people, but I never felt like I could really fully be myself. And being in the kink community, growing up, being somebody that was like the nerdy quiet kid who read books all the time, literally I would stay in from recess to read books, okay? I won an award one time in elementary school because I had read like there was like me and like one kid that were neck and neck for reading the most books. And it was like, you know, we see like a leaderboard for like, I don't know, like a PvP game where it's like the top 25 are like pretty closely together and like the top 2 players are like way higher than everyone else. That's what I was like for reading, okay? That was me as a child. So when I am speaking about this, I speak from experience. I talk to a computer for a living. I talk to a camera for a living. I'm not exactly high up on the social strata in most places. So I grew up and I was like very like, I wouldn't say that I was like super like overtly nerdy, but I definitely got like ridiculed as a child for being into certain things, like being into Pokemon and liking anime and things like that. That was like not fun to be around. So I felt very isolated growing up. And then when I got into kink, I was like, these are my people. Like, people are very upfront. They're very friendly. They wear their nerdiness and their weirdness on their sleeve. They are not afraid to show it, okay? And I had this experience at the convention I went to over the weekend of, like, everyone being, like, an introvert-friendly amount of friendly, I guess is the best way to say it. Like, you know, talking to people, but also being respectful, not pushing conversations, and that's what was really nice. So, one, I would keep in mind that especially if you are kinky, if it's a good group of people that are kind of roughly around your age, you know, kind of plus or minus 5 years, you're probably gonna like get along with people. And it might even feel sort of like a homecoming of like, wow, these are my people. I didn't know that this was something that I could have, or people like wanted to talk to me and wanted to be friends with me. And it still blows my mind to this day when I meet people in the kink community. I'm like, you want to be my friend? You want to talk to me? Like, I don't know, this is like a weird new thing. I don't know how to handle it. And it's really, really rewarding when it does happen. So keep that in mind. It's probably not going to be as big of a disparity as you might imagine. It's also extremely common for people in the kink scene to have anxiety, to have ADHD, to be autistic. All those things are very common in kink as well. I don't know if we actually have any like survey research about this. My offhand recollection of this is that it's probably like 25% of the community at least is some flavor of that too. So you get a lot of people that are on a similar wavelength oftentimes as you. I would set yourself up for success by very carefully selecting which party you go to. Probably not a great idea as a brand new newbie who's maybe a little anxious to walk into like the Edgeplay, power night where everyone's going to be doing like weird stuff involving like blood impact and simulated waterboarding or whatever extreme flavor of the week is happening in your local community. Would not recommend walking into that, but if you can look around, you can find things like taster parties, newbie nights, orientations, general play parties, sort of ish roughly in that order. Those would probably be the best places to start, especially going to a munch first if you can, or showing up really early and going to the social hour part of the dungeon before everyone gets into the full swing of playing. Because most dungeons, at least like home dungeons that really regularly host parties, most of them are going to be majority people socializing, whereas it's going to be play that happens, but it's probably going to start up later because people kind of want to mingle and they want to hang out, and then they get into the play parts. That's going to be a lot easier, I think, for you to kind of get into if you're going to more of those type of events as opposed to like the advanced edge players night, warning, everything here is going to be potentially like really triggering or whatever. Probably don't go to that night. And then I recommend wearing something that you feel confident in, but having little things that maybe signify like fandoms that you're in or things that you're into, right? It could be on your shirt. It could be something on your water bottle. It could be a pin on your backpack. It could be, maybe your ace or your arrow or your pan or something, and you have a little like pride flag bandana and you tie it around your backpack or your toy bag, or you wear it around your neck, or you flag for it in your back pocket. You have some kind of way to start conversations with people that makes it easier for someone who doesn't really know you to be able to approach you and say, oh, I really liked whatever that thing was, and then you can start a conversation based off of that. I think it's sometimes difficult when you are in a smaller community to break into other people's conversations because they're not as used to new people coming in all the time when it's a smaller community to begin with. And so they don't necessarily have a group by default that's like the welcome wagon for new people. And I've definitely been guilty of this myself, going into a space I'm not familiar with, of kind of just like lurking and listening because that's what I'm most comfortable with. But also, don't pressure yourself to like meet people or talk to anyone the first time you go to an event. Sometimes it's really smart to just show up and go to a party and not plan to play, not plan to talk to people. Just show up, see what the vibe is like, watch people, maybe get in a conversation or two if somebody else approaches you, but just to kind of feel out how being in that space is for you, not pressure yourself to have any particular outcome. Then when you come back and you know kind of what to expect and what the flow of the night is like and what kind of people you're going to see and how they're going to be dressed, you're more prepared for subsequent visits to know what's going to happen, what people are going to be talking about, who's going to be there. Maybe you saw, some conversations happening, you caught some names, you saw some name tags or something to get familiar with people. But if you do want to be brave and approach people yourself, which I know for people with social anxiety is like advanced maneuvers, I would not necessarily say that you need to go out and introduce yourself and be like, hi, I'm a new person. But if you see somebody that's maybe not in like a super, they're not like sitting in the corner closed off, body language wise, sitting, having a private conversation away from other people. But if you see people that are kind of like more open body language, they're not like closed off, they're not like, directly making eye contact only with each other. They're kind of like open either to a larger group of people or it's like, 2 or 3 people that are all kind of like openly mingling. You can wait until there's a lull in the conversation and then jump in and say, oh, hi, my name is Mary. I'm like really excited to be here. It's my first time. I don't know, like, I guess I'd probably go for like complimenting something that somebody else is like wearing or something about them. I don't recommend complimenting things that people don't have control over. So like, don't compliment somebody on like, how pale their skin is. but you can compliment on somebody. If somebody has like really like intricately dyed hair and like a fancy hairdo, that took effort to pull off. You can compliment that. You can compliment somebody's makeup. You can compliment their outfit or a t-shirt they're wearing. Or maybe they have some kind of like slogan from a thing you recognize. And that's a good way to start a conversation, is like, oh, hey, I really like this thing. You know, this is my name. I'm new here. You know, basically like, you know, what's going on? How is everybody? And then you can kind of get into a conversation that way. I feel like it's really hard to give an example of how to do this in the abstract, that actually like being like an 80s like VHS recording of like, you're going up to somebody and, you know, like one of those like life instructional videos where it's like how to interact with new friends at a party. Like I feel like I need to record one of those and it would be easier versus just doing it off the top of my head. But that's kind of what I would look for. And most people are going to be really friendly, really welcoming. They're going to be excited a new person is there. They're going to be like, oh, okay, great. Like, what do you know about our community? Have you gone to this munch yet? What are you interested in? Like, people are going to be nice and they're going to be welcoming, because I feel like there's like a sense of safety that exists in kink spaces where you know you're around other people that are not going to judge you for whatever your individual weird thing is, because everyone here is weird. So you can just be totally open and very relaxed. Whereas I think a lot of people that are more anxious and nerdy and are used to being isolated, we have to kind of clam up in public, right? We have to be on guard when we're talking to our family members or our coworkers, because we don't want to let some really embarrassing shit slide out that, you know, oh, what? Like, you know, my favorite comic is Sunstone. Oh, what's that about? Like, you know, you don't want that conversation to happen. So to be careful. You don't have to be as guarded in kink, which I think helps people, you know, be more friendly. And then the main tip that I have that's sort of a universal tip for any scenario is, if you're trying to develop trust with somebody, and if you meet somebody that you're like, oh, I think they're really cool, I want to be their friend, I want to get to know them better, we trust people who trust us first. We are vulnerable with people that are vulnerable to us first. So that means kind of opening up and being, you know, willing to disclose things about yourself within reason. Because especially as a new person, if you're like, let's say a brand new submissive and you're talking to like an older dominant or top person, I would be a little bit more reserved in sharing too much information about them, because unfortunately there are people that are like, a new person, I can pop their cherry. Let me mine for information. You might be a little more reserved with that. But if you're meeting maybe like another submissive or somebody who's a switch, or like somebody that like you just feel comfortable being around, and like you feel like you're really similar, but maybe you wouldn't like play together, you wouldn't pursue a relationship with that person, you know, then I would get into like talking about like, oh, you know, I discovered kink by like reading this thing, or I watched this video where this thing happened. You know, be open about, in a minor way, things that are not like potentially damaging to you in a really serious way early on, but like are about you, right? Not just like the weather or the traffic. I mean, you can start there, right? That's kind of like the opening little bit is like, man, the weather's been really weird lately. Or like, man, it took me so long to find parking. And like, people can probably relate to that. Be like, oh yeah, the parking around here is the worst. I actually found a lot that's like up the block. I always park there. It's a little bit more expensive, but I always know I'm going to be able to find a spot. You can go, oh, great. That's really helpful for when I come back here next time. Like, you know, do you have any restaurants you like to go to in the area? Whatever. You can start a conversation about that, you know, if they have other recommendations and things to talk about. So that's the direction I would go in. Then you can work up into talking more personally about yourself, your interests, what brought you here, and then hopefully other people will open up to you in turn. And then that's how you do. That's how you make friendship happen. That is how you make friendship happen, is mutual vulnerability and disclosure. That's the secret. Little did all of you know. Anyways, I really like, 2024 is the year of friends, okay? I feel like I don't really talk about my personal life on stream. I learned my lesson having public relationships on YouTube a long time ago, but like romantically in my life, I feel super fulfilled. I really want to have friends in the kink scene though. That's like the one thing, because I moved to Portland and like, I'm very like COVID cautious, so I don't really go out to public events like hardly at all unless I have a really good reason to go. I basically only go if it's an event that's going to be like outside, if it's going to be masked, or like it's a really big to do and I'm like going with somebody and like I'm going to do a specific thing. I don't really like risk getting sick just to like go to any random old play party that I may or may not have a good time at. Because that's just like not what I want to focus my life on anymore. So 2024 is going to be the year of making friends. Okay, I'm studying the way of studying the way of friendship. I don't know what that means about me, but yeah, I feel very filled. How do you know if you're talking to a dom, a sub, or a switch? I'm going to answer this one very briefly because you should be able to ask. And if you can't ask, why? I don't know. I feel like being in the community, I've never, like, okay, if I'm like talking to somebody at a party and I've just met them and it's like a kink party, right? Or it's like a play event, a munch, whatever. I'm talking to them. And I'm like not entirely sure if they're like a switch or like maybe they're a bottom leaning switch or they're just a bottom or they're like a top leaning switch or they're just top. Like if for some reason I can't tell, I will just ask them and I'll be like, oh yeah, like I'm like more of a submissive myself person. Like how about you? And then like they'll go into like, oh yeah, like I'm a sadist and I'm really into needles. And like people typically are like more than happy to list off the like 40 things they're into in kink. And it's like not really a big deal. But if you're like talking to somebody in the wild and you're like, are you a sub? Are you a dom? I can't tell. Are you a switch? The math is not mathing, as they say. What is happening here? If for some reason you can't directly ask them, like, how do you identify in kink? Like, what would you call yourself if you're kinky? I want to know why. Like, what, like, because I feel like if you're dating on, like, a dating app and you're meeting somebody and you want to be kinky, it shouldn't, like, offend somebody to directly ask them, like, oh, hey, it seems like you're probably into kink. Like, how would you identify? Like, that shouldn't be, like, a big question. And I'm not blaming you for the record. I'm just like, if you feel like you can't ask the question because somebody's being real dodgy about it, I'm like, does the answer really matter? Because they're being kind of sus with it, you know? I would be so embarrassed to ask something that can be so personal. Well, I guess I'm talking in like, if I'm in the community, that is not a personal question at all. That's like the vanilla equivalent of asking what you do for a living. Like, it's not really that big of a deal at all. If you're on a dating app and you're meeting somebody explicitly because like you seem like you're both into kink, that's gonna have to be a step that happens to be able to potentially pursue kink with the person. But if you're just like talking to somebody that you just like met out in the everyday world and you think they're kinky but you don't really know what they'd be if they were actually kinky, then that's a different story. Then it's like, yeah, maybe wait until you have some more evidence before like directly asking that particular question. That I would understand. Yeah. Sometimes it's worth it to be brave. But yeah, it's not like if you're in the community, it's not really a big deal to ask. If anybody's like, you don't know who I am? You don't know that I'm this amazing top that everyone wants to play with all of the time? Like, all right, buddy, get in line. Everyone thinks there's always like that person. There's always like a couple of people in a local scene. No matter how big or small it is, there's always at least one, probably two or three, that are like, I'm this person. I am God's gift to submissives. I am the ultimate capital D Domly Dom. And they just like, when they walk in and you're new and they're like, oh, you're going to have to know who I am. I'm Master Jimmy. You may kiss the ring. Like, if they're like that, it's like, okay, well, like, sorry I offended you by like clarifying. I didn't mean to insult you. I did have somebody who is apparently very well known in the scene that I did not know. I had a conversation with them because we were talking about bloodplay, and then like I asked them a question about if they were into like I'm not gonna get into the details, but I'll just say that I asked them if they were into some specific like more advanced bloodplay techniques, and then they laughed at me, and then their partner was like, honey, not everyone knows who you are. And I was like, I'm sorry, I don't know, but they were from a different part of the country, so I didn't feel too bad about it. It was just kind of funny that it's like, yeah, even if you seem like you're a real hot shit, not everyone knows who you are. Don't you know who I think I am? I know for realsies though, but like that title for real. Okay, let's get back to some other questions. So many good questions, you guys. I'm loving it. Keep them coming. I've been a subscriber for a while. Love your videos. This is the first time I watch you live. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Carrie. Oh, okay, crap. I just got booted to the bottom of the chat, which means YouTube maxed out where it was. Okay. Give me a second. I'm scrolling. I need to have like waiting music I can play for when I'm like scrolling and looking for a question. I've been thinking about that. I'm like, I really want like waiting screen music. I'm actually going to be, I'm in the process right now of like redesigning all of my like channel art, stream art, getting new art made. I'm looking into potentially getting music. I don't know. I'm like not sure how expensive it is to get music made. So I have like, that's like not as solid as maybe just like buying a commercial license for an existing song, but it's in the works, and I'm hoping that I can eventually have something I can just play, you know, while I'm scrolling for questions in the chat. Oh, here we are. New sub here. Hi, Evie. My partner and I recently did a contract, BDSM. Thanks for clarifying, but he doesn't seem to care about it at all. Help. Okay, great question, Yoru. So there's a phenomena that many people in kink will experience, which you may currently be experiencing. And that is, some people are really hot for the process of making a contract. And I want to make an analogy first, because I feel like this is like more common, like more people would be able to relate to this. Like, I made a video recently where I talked about discipline, right? And there's people who enjoy achieving the state of being disciplined, right? Like becoming a disciplined submissive, right? They follow orders really quickly. They anticipate people's needs, all of that. And then there are brats who enjoy the process of being disciplined without becoming disciplined. And there are people who will take a similar tact with things like contracts. There are people who like contracts because they like having the rules of the relationship fully outlined. So when they then go on to follow it, it's a lot easier. Everything's very clear. It's easy peasy. That's what they want. They like the clarity. They liked maybe how strict it is, how exacting it is, but they want to follow it. Other people really like making the contract, right? There's a reason why one of the scenes in the 50 Shades movies is going over the contract and like Anna researching it and them having the little like negotiation in the conference room of like, you know, see anal fisting, scratch it out, or like whatever it is that she says. And I'm pretty sure it's anal fisting though. I'm like pretty confident about that one. Though the idea of Christian Grey doing anal fisting and like being competent enough to do that just on its own is like very funny to me. Anyways, that's not really the point of this. But like some people are really into the process of making a contract. And then like when it's done and it's set, they're like, it's over. They're like, oh great, we actually wrote it. That was the fun part for me. And maybe your partner doesn't realize this about themselves yet, but that could be a very real thing. Maybe they don't actually really want to be following a contract. They want to write down a contract and they like the process of it or being told they had one, but they don't really actually want to follow through in it. So that's one possibility. The other possibility, well, I guess also too, because it sounds like you're talking about a male partner, there are a lot of people, especially male submissives, that get into kink because of their interest in, this is not monetized, I'm just going to say, they like porn. And they have a very specific idea of what they think submission is because they watch porn. And it's like very hot, very sexual, but they don't really like process it as like an everyday life experience. And so they don't really treat it with day-to-day seriousness because they compartmentalize it the same way that people do their interests in certain porn or, you know, maybe their masturbation habits or something. And so they think that they want to be submissive and give up power and have rules and have a contract. Well, what they're really into is bottoming with role play of not having power in the relationship, which is a different thing. And it could be that your partner is more in that latter category of they like temporary role play in the moment of losing control, somebody else being able to order them around, but when it's done, it's done. They don't really want to have anything in between those more distinct moments. That could be one possibility. Another thing that could be happening here, I'm just giving you options maybe to kind of explore, and maybe they will help you if you approach your partner and they're like, oh, I don't really know what's wrong, I'm not sure what's happening. This can kind of give you some ideas for like, well, maybe it could be this, or it could be this, or it could be this. It could also be that like, they're just not used to having to like listen to other people. Like, they're just not practiced at other people enforcing limitations on them. A lot of people that are socialized as male, that grow up in that environment, and then they have jobs in that environment, the rules apply to them differently than other people sometimes, especially depending on the culture they were brought up in. And they might not have to always take the rules super seriously, or they might have been able to skirt around them. I definitely know people who are like this, where they're really intelligent, they're smart, and so they go their whole lives not having to study, not having to do any kind of personal discipline. You know, they somehow got a really well-paying job, but they never had to go to college, so they never developed study habits, or maybe they skated through college because they were able to just like brute force the multiple choice exams or whatever, and they kind of just like go upwards, maybe even into management, without actually having to like follow any real rules, because they can either they can charm themselves out of having to follow them because the rules shouldn't have to apply to them, or they just are like, they just have a guile about them or an intellect that has typically allowed them to dodge having to like listen to what other people have to say. And then when you're in a relationship and you do want to give up that power and authority, and you do want other people to be able to order you around, you might just not have any experience knowing what that's like, and like having to be disciplined, right? That could be like waking up at a certain time, having a certain bedtime, doing certain daily habits, working for a certain number of hours every day, you know, going to the gym every day, drinking water, whatever, not having sugar without permission, laundry list of potential items there. So maybe in this scenario, if you seem to not care about it at all, I don't know. I guess I'm reading this as though the reason he doesn't care about the contract is because he's a submissive. I realized that you didn't actually say that he was submissive. I inferred that. My apologies. If he's a submissive and he's not caring about it, and you're the one who's the dominant partner, you can say, hey, put in your best Jordan Peterson impression and go, hey, buckaroo. You know, let's get down to brass tacks here. We have a contract. You haven't followed through on this, this, and this, which means this, and this is not going to happen, right? Revoking privileges, you know, doing certain punishments, maybe not doing things that normally they would really like, right? Like maybe they have a rule that's focused on a particular fetish they have or a kink they have, and maybe go, well, because you couldn't do these other rules, we're no longer doing this thing that's really important to you until you can show and demonstrate that you're, you know, really into this. But if they're the dominant partner and they don't care about the contract, I mean, similar things could still be applying, right? They enjoy the process of making a contract but not really following through on it. Or they like role-playing, being the dominant partner, whereas what they really are is more like a top who wants to role-play having power, but they don't really actually want it on a more everyday basis. But like, if your dominant partner does not care about a contract, well, one, contracts are not for everybody. Again, what I was saying earlier, like probably at least 25% of our community has ADHD or is autistic or is somewhere in that neurospicy wheelhouse of experiences. Sometimes for those people, contracts are amazing. For other people in that same realm of spiciness, contracts are like, the what now? You could have literally gone over it from top to bottom with them 2 hours before, and they're going to be like, yeah, I don't remember that at all. I don't remember what, like, I know that we had rules, but like, what were they? I don't know. So it could just be that like contracts are not really compatible with their brain, and they're trying to make it work because the idea is, well, if you're dominant, if you're doing power exchange, you have to have a contract because it's simply the done thing. And that might not be what works for them. So you can say, in a polite and respectful way that makes sense for your dynamic, because just because they're not following the rules doesn't mean that you don't have to, or that you shouldn't, out of respect. You can say, sir, I was really looking forward to getting to do more with our contract. I've noticed that over this week, we haven't been following up on this, this, and this. Can we talk about that? You can either have like outside dynamic time to talk about this, or you can try to talk about it in the dynamic. I try to, if you're not really keeping up the day-to-day anyways, I feel like what's the harm in like dropping the pretense and just talking about it like everyday people and being like, hey, it was really important to me that we did all this work to put together this contract, and I see that we're not really making it happen. what's going on here. It could be a time issue. It could be them not managing their time properly, just not being in the habit of it yet. It could be you bit off more than you could really chew. It could be that maybe they felt pressured to do it, but it's not really their thing, so they're kind of trying to avoid having to do it because it's not something that really is motivating for them. Could be a bunch of things. All of it really comes down to if at this stage you do want to still maintain some kind of contracty or rules type dynamic, I would probably really parse it down, okay? Temporarily gray out like 90% of the contract. Stick
Mr.
to like
Beansman donated $5. Hi Evie, me and Miss are trying to nail down exactly what my title and role in the dynamic actually are. We know that our dynamic is very service focused, but I'm having issues nailing down exactly what it looks like.
I feel like if I use the Jeopardy theme that much, it would probably get claimed. Good question. Mr. Beansman says, hi, Evie. Me and my miss are trying to nail down exactly what my title and role in the dynamic actually are. We know that our dynamic is very service focused, but I'm having issues nailing down exactly what it is. Okay. Good question. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up because I'm almost done with this thought, and then we'll talk about service titles for masculine-oriented people because I love that. So, end note would be, at the end of it, just pare down 90% of what you're doing, gray it out, temporary, put it on hold, put it on the shelf, okay? Stick to the top 10% that are really important to both of you, right? Usually that's like wearing a collar, like speech restrictions, titles. That's the bare bones that most people want to keep around. And then as you become more consistent, as you have some more experience working within a contract, you slowly, week by week, add in more and more that you already have written down, and then you just check every week, like, is this working? Do we like this? Can we keep up with this at the pace we want to? Because maybe what you want to do is have them pick out your outfit every single day. But that takes time in the morning. That's, maybe 30 minutes. If you're living together and they're physically picking out clothing for you to wear, that could be an extra 30 minutes of their evening or morning they're devoting to you, and they might be really strapped for time, they'd be really tired. That might not be sustainable every day of the week, but it might work on like Mondays or Fridays, or, if your office has like a casual day or something, maybe that's when they pick out the outfit. That might be more sustainable. So it's about checking things, going slowly, figuring out what works, and building rather than just like making a really big ass giant contract out of complete scratch and then going from 0 to 100, because I find that generally does not work for people. But let's talk about titles, because I really like titles and I think they're really fun. I know FetLife actually, let's like open that up, because FetLife actually has like a ton of new roles they've added over the last like year or so. The thing that instinctually came to mind as like the first thing I thought of was butler. I really like butler. Anything butler, valet, or valet, depending on if you like the British pronunciation or not. Household servant, just servant. Oh, butler's on here. They knew what I was on about. Minion is funny. I like Minion. If you like doing kind of more of the force femme stuff, you could definitely go with like, ooh, Plaything is on here. That's a cute one. There's like so many cute names on here now. They're like not in any kind of like rational order that I can discern. It's a little bit difficult to like, I guess they're sort of vaguely organized by, there's like actually not really that many that are, oh, maybe it's in relationships. Maybe the relationship section is what I need to be looking at. Let me see here. What do we got? It's like not really offering any other ones. Okay, let's look at DS relationships. Let's see, because there's going to be a bunch in here. Definitely service submissive. Servant, I think I already said, right? Worshiper, property. Property is one that I personally really like. I don't know, it's just like that really works with my brain. In service to, somebody being in service to. I don't know what is a bond maid. I don't know what is that like a rep? Is that like a That seems like that's a sci-fi, like, fantasy sort of deal. What else is in... servant, maid, butler, chauffeur, and minion appear to be the little collection that is here on fedlife.com. Skull remade. A footman. Because a footman is like a position of staff, right? So like, let me see, like, position of household staff names. I know that I've like looked this up before. Attendant. There's I like attendant. I feel like attendant is like kind of businessy and professional, and I really like that. Or assistant. Personal assistant. I know somebody who has that as a role. They're personal assistant to somebody. This is like not giving me what I... This is like hotelier, like staff positions, which is not what I'm looking for. Oh, here we go. Full formal household staff hierarchy. That's what I'm looking for, baby. So butler is like the highest rank, right? And then valets or valets are like underneath that. A gentleman's gentleman. I guess it would be a gentlewoman's gentleman in this case. A chauffeur, gardeners, and then you would have a lady's maid would be the equivalent of that, of a butler. You know, there'd be a head housekeeper, a housekeeper. Wait, is a manny a real title? Is that like a thing? Because there's nannies and mannies, right? Actually, wasn't that complete of a guide? I'm like disappointed. I want to know every single like fancy. Housekeeper and houseman. I like houseman. Houseman's nice too. A companion. Ooh, I like companion as well. That's nice. A gentle femme, a captain. Assistant, a trained monkey. Yeah, I don't think that one's an option on FetLife, but yeah, could probably look at that. As a kitchen boy, housemaid, a footman, governess, tutor. I like companion. I feel like companion is like the most. I feel like that's like a really good middle ground between like servant and I don't know, like what's the name? Is that a gigolo? What's the name? What's the name of the like men who like entertain fancy ladies? Like I don't know. I feel like it's sort of in between that. It's like it's discreet, and I like that. Companion. Oh yeah, like Firefly. Yes, I've seen 2 episodes of Firefly, which I don't know how many there are. I'm not sure if it's like a lot. Call them your executive chef. Yeah, caretaker. True. Yep. Oh, I really appreciate your content. Thank you. That's so nice. Thank you. Gentle femme and gentleman. Yes. Good pairing there. I love it. All right, hopefully that gives you some ideas to work with. But sometimes it's about, you know, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Try to find one that resonates with you. You can go through a list, right? You can get into more like knightly stuff, right? Like Squire, right? If you're getting into more of the fancy roleplay stuff. But I wouldn't worry too much about like picking something that's like super unique. Just pick something that feels comfortable. Comfortable, accurate, and these days on FetLife, you can have so many different roles, titles, DS relationships on FetLife that like you don't have to pick just one. You don't have to pick just one, and that's fantastic. Let me check here. Sup, can that be a question? Sure. Is the class good for online doms? Yes, there's going to be lots of material in there. Like pretty much all of it is going to be applicable for real life and online relationships. Steak season tacos. Ooh, fancy. We're getting fancy with it. I'm probably going to have like, I might actually have taco salad for dinner. I really like taco salad. I like have like, there's like a couple of foods that I eat a lot. Buffalo soy curls, either on their own in a sandwich or in a salad. Taco bowls. What's something, and like, or like some variant of that, like some kind of salad. Like macaroni, probably. It's like the three things I make a lot. Because I can make a lot of it. I can dole it out over the week. It's good stuff. I just post my kinky fanfic on AO3. Yes, AO3 is alive and well. That's a good point. What books or authors would you recommend on the kinky fet world at any level? I don't really like follow any like people specifically for their writings on FetLife. Usually if somebody has like a popular writing, it sort of finds its way to me anyways because enough other people like it. I see a fair amount from, I want to say Spanish Red. I think their username is Spanish Red. And who else? Lee Harrington is on there. There's a bunch of people I know that are authors and educators, but they don't really put a lot of writing on there. But Spanish Red is the one that comes to mind as like a fairly popular person. But I don't really like, I'm sure there are people on FetLife that are like, ooh, I'm here for the writing, but like it's not me. Not me so much. What do y'all think about Myron and the other? Oh no, that's mean. That's mean. What's his name? Myron and like, is it William? It's like some W name. Wilson? No, that's the volleyball. I feel like just calling him W's wrong. I feel like that makes me think of H.W. Bush, and I don't know if that's like more insulting. My opinion is, I would not listen to them because why would I listen to any man that thinks that 80 reps is a good idea for a fucking Romanian deadlift in the gym? Like, that's my opinion. If a man is banging out 80 reps of RDLs in the gym at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm not listening to his opinion. Like, Myron, I'm not a fitness influencer, okay? I'm like basically intermediate level when it comes to being a lifter. But I know enough to know that if I'm doing a deadlift, I should definitely not be pumping out that many reps. And if I am, I need to be increasing the weight because that's not how that works. That's like, if you're doing like curls and like more isolation exercises, you can do sort of more the low weight, high rep thing. That's not what deadlifts are for. That's not what the like, how like, there are like 3 things that you brand yourself on. And it's getting women, getting money, and getting fit. And you're at least bad at 2 of those things. So, like, what's happening? What's happening, Myron? How have you not picked this up, all right? She has come out from her slumber. She is now gazing upon the outdoors. I'm going to have to find another USB port to plug the camera in so I can get it to be closer over there. Or I can also move her bed probably to, like, the other corner of the couch. I signed up for the workshop starting this weekend. Is there homework for that? Could you let us know how we could prepare properly? The best way you can prepare properly is come with a notebook and pen or have a Google Doc open, get ready to type stuff out. That's really what you need to do to be prepared. It's not that intense. There's not going to be any homework. I mean, some people, maybe somebody has homework. Just come with an open mind and be ready to write stuff down. That's basically it. So I don't know. I did see, I think whatever the other guy's name is, I think he's Fresh, because I think Myron is Fit, right? I didn't Fresh like Mr. like, you know, because their whole thing is well, I don't know, they have like a weird combination of beliefs because they're red pillars, but then they talk about like having sex with lots of women, but then they also talk about how like the traditional family, you know, marriage, one man, one woman, house, kids is like the ideal. So I don't really know where they stand like outside of this on like things like abortion or what to do if the girl you're with gets knocked up. I don't know what their usual stance is, but I guess he got somebody pregnant and like it became a whole to do and like she blew his shit up and like it's a we might get kicked out. It may no longer be Fresh and Fit. It may just be Fit and some other F word. I don't know. Like it would be fit and no, that's wrong. I can't say that. I was gonna say fit and fruity, but I feel like that has like really bad implications. I was just thinking of like somebody that was like really into gambling, you know, like fruit machines. That's what I was thinking of. Fit and it's not, if it's not Fresh and Fit, it have to be fit and fit and fashionable. I feel like anything else just kind of makes it sound like a Queer Eye like fan podcast. I feel like anything else that's not that, like a RuPaul podcast, a Drag Race podcast. That would be quite the pivot though for content wise for them. But my opinion is I don't really like them. I think they're a drag on society. I don't know why anyone pays attention to them, and I feel like there's so many other better people you could be getting advice from. That's my opinion. I'm not going to insult their appearance. I don't know. Like, I'm asexual. I am like closer to being gay than being a straight woman. I don't know what like my brain doesn't really register like what is typically attractive about a person in the way that like a non-asexual, more straight person would. And so like I could look at Fresh and Fit. I have literally no idea if they're conventionally attractive or not. I think they're probably both like fairly average, but I have no idea. So like that doesn't matter. I don't care if they're attractive. I don't care like how their voices sound or if they sound annoying or anything like that. Their information, the way they lay up the podcast with like having 20 women who are drunk around a table, I feel like that's just ridiculous. Why would you listen to their opinion? I really hope there is a meme version of them in the new GTA game. Can you imagine how fun it would be to have a GTA mission where you have to like go and like fuck up some shit in like an alpha male podcast in like a high-rise luxury apartment complex? Wouldn't that be like so fun? I feel like that would be a really fun mission. That would be great. All right, let's get in some more questions here. I don't know why I decided to like talk about that. That was like completely unnecessary. Any advice for dealing with feels when a dynamic ends, but the relationship doesn't? Ooh, my partner ended our dynamic, but we're still partners living together, and I'm having trouble processing it. Okay, so your partners. I'm assuming that means you're romantic partners, but you're not doing a DS dynamic anymore. That's really hard. I mean, I've definitely had relationship transitions before where we've adjusted between like, you know, how kink focused our relationship is, how romantic it is or not. But I've never like gotten rid of a DS dynamic and then like maintained a romantic relationship. So I don't have personal experience going through it, but my intuition of how I would probably want to process that is I would probably want to be able to have some time by myself. I'm not saying like move out or anything, but like staying with a friend for a long weekend, going to visit family, taking yourself on a little spa, like staycation. You know, there's like a day spa somewhere in the city where you can just like sign up for a weekend pass, go and hang out in like, you know, some hot water, some cold plunges, some steam rooms, whatever for a weekend. Just kind of like get everything out of your system, get relaxed, process what you're feeling outside of the environment. Because I feel like what would be really hard about that is you're trying to like basically deprogram yourself from having a DS relationship while staying in the environment where the DS relationship happened. So I feel like in order to kind of like get to a clean slate and start seeing your relationship as just vanilla, if that's something that you want to do, it's good to have time away to like really understand, let your brain get its little like brain tentacles around the concept that like you're no longer in a DS relationship. Because I know for me, if I was living with a partner that I had like called a certain title for, you know, months or years, and we had certain protocol around the house, like, you know, who does what chores, you know, opening doors, running errands, who wakes who up in the morning, who makes the coffee, whatever. If I just suddenly had to get rid of all that, but I was still living with the person, it would be, frankly, it would be a mind fuck for a while. So I think maybe having some time away, if you can afford it. I'm not saying like go on vacation anywhere, do anything crazy, but like, you know, stay in a hotel for a little bit, get an Airbnb, go hang out with some friends for a long weekend, go visit your parents, go camping if the weather's nice where you live. Like, find a kind of relatively low cost way just to have some time apart, understand, and then come back to the environment, and hopefully it'll be easier to process that. I feel like if you're in it, because I don't know how contentious is like any of the dynamic was. I don't know if it was like a mutual choice, if it was one-sided, if it's like life circumstances, you know, oh, I'm gonna have to be traveling for work too much, or somebody's really sick, or what. There could be a lot of things that lead people to maintain a romantic relationship but continue a dynamic. I feel like it's worth it to have a very explicit conversation of, okay, we're maintaining a romantic relationship, we're ending our DS, here's what we're going to do to make that happen, right? Think about all the things that you would normally do that become habits in your relationship. Things like, you know, the errands, the chores, making coffee, you know, bedtime routines, titles, you know, maybe things you did sexually or intimately in the relationship. Here's what the new behavior is going to be. Here's how we're going to implement that. Going cold turkey, I think, is really difficult. If you have the bandwidth for it, I feel like having some allowance for a gradual slope off is probably a lot better. Have an off ramp if you can manage it, right? Like, if you have been, I don't know, like if you have been for like 2 years making your partner's coffee every morning, you're gonna wake up, it's gonna be 6 a.m., you're gonna, in your half sleepy state, still make the coffee occasionally. So maybe you ramp it down by, instead of making the coffee every day of the week, maybe you do it like 3 times a week. You do it like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or you only do it on Mondays, or you, instead of making the coffee yourself, you like order them Starbucks in the morning so it's ready for them, you know, when they're ready to get at the door to go to work. Things like that, where you have some kind of ramp off before you fully just like quit everything. But I know that can be hard, because if it is more one-sided or you're really reluctant about any of the dynamic, maintaining the dynamic in any way can kind of feel like holding onto the relationship and kind of giving the person hope that that's going to be recoverable, which you may or may not want to do. That would probably be how I would end it. I feel like some kind of ramp off. I also feel like this is something that is a really good case for like self-collaring and self-submission. Actually, Lee Harrington recently put out a book that's about, I don't remember what the title of the book is, but it's about like solo surrender and like being committed to yourself in like a relationship, like dating yourself basically is sort of the concept of it. I feel like that might kind of be useful, of like, okay, so you can't have that dynamic with that person anymore, but you can have a dynamic with yourself. So you can keep the things that are really important to you, that are good for your health and well-being, right? Maybe you had rules around, you know, meditation or doing yoga or, you know, sleep habits or phone usage that you do want to maintain. And it's helpful to have some kind of accountability in place. You can be your own accountability. So you can kind of set up something through like Obedience or other even like vanilla habit tracking apps, or like a physical calendar or some kind of checklist where you can go through and go, okay, I'm going to keep maintaining these habits. So the core things that are important in my life are not totally, the core relationship is shifting, but like the core habits that make me feel steady and like I have a routine, those aren't changing. Because a lot of change all at once can be really overwhelming. But if you are maintaining, you know, your usual sleep routine, you know, your usual dietary habits, how much water you're drinking, your vitamins, your yoga, your meditation, your whatever, your daily walks, whatever it was in your relationship for you, keeping those going, I think, can be really healthy and helpful, because then when you're doing them just for yourself and you're rewarding yourself, you learn to associate them with yourself and not with your partner anymore, which also, if you do end up having a DS relationship again in the future, it'll make it easier to transition those things to kind of be given to someone else to have authority over, because they're not going to only be associated with like a previous romantic relationship. But yeah, it's hard. I'm really sorry that like having to go through that adjustment is really difficult. The age of consent, for the record, has absolutely no bearing on... This is the problem. Okay, minors don't understand this. Just in case this person is, like, still listening. The age of consent and the age of majority are two different things. The age of consent does not get you in the door to BDSM events or classes or parties or anything like that. You have to be the age of majority, which is minimum 18. There are places where it's above 18 as well. So that is why that rule is in place. The age of consent doesn't mean anything. And if this is why I'm saying this, if some person on the internet is telling you it's fine if we have a BDSM relationship, even though you're 15 and I'm 21, because of the age of consent laws, that does not fucking count. That does not count, okay? Also, because it's my stream and I get to decide what people I want to talk to, and I am super uncomfortable giving BDSM giving BDSM advice to people that are studying for their SATs and deciding where they want to go to college. That is like, you should be focused in getting into adulthood in a safe way, learning those basic relationship skills, and then when you're an adult, when you're 18, then you can come back, okay? That's fine. No, Sacred Kink is not the book I was thinking of. Let me actually look it up. Lee Harrington, new book. Become Your Own Beloved is the name of the book. It came out in May. So there you go. Oh, we got like half an hour left. Okay, great. We should have like plenty of time for some more questions. So, sorry, I just had to make sure we dealt with that. Every once in a while, there's somebody who comes in and is like, am I 16? Can I be here? And it's like, what does it fucking say on the screen? That's why you can't be here. If you are that age and you have to be like, but why can't I be the exception? That's why the rule is there. That's why the rule is there. Though not often, there are people who for some reason make fake IDs and try to go into BDSM parties. Don't do that. Don't be that person. You're going to wreck shit for everyone else. It's not good. There's no reason to. BDSM is an adult activity, all right? Don't rush it. 18 is still so young. You have so much time to explore. Giving yourself a year or two head start when you really shouldn't be is not really going to make all that big of a difference. And you're probably not really going to have that many, like, life-changing experiences that you're gonna like regret that you missed out on because like, ooh, I started a year later. It's not really gonna be that big of a deal. All right, we're talking about books. Then we just did the dynamic question. As a physically disabled man, I've heard that BDSM is very healing with regard to us exploring our sexuality for those of us with disabilities. What are your thoughts? Well, first of all, I'm not somebody with any kind of disability. So, just I guess it depends on how you construe that question. But I don't have that experience. So I can't say that for myself. I can say, let's go off an example here from having been at Kink Fest this weekend. The last couple of years, especially since COVID, they've really been doing a lot to make accessibility more of a focus in their planning for the event. So for example, this year they had new distinctly marked off areas for, I believe they had, I remember seeing ASL. I think they offered signed exact English as an option to it. I don't know if anyone actually ended up taking that because that's kind of like a generational thing. But they had like a whole extra row that was for just the ASL interpreter. Then they actually had a separate area for people that had mobility aids, with people that had scooters, different types of wheelchairs, things like that, that had their own separate area. It used to be there was just like general priority seating and it was all kind of mixed. There wasn't really, that I remember anyways, a specific area just for people that had mobility aids. It was all like kind of the front row basically was it. And I feel like they did a lot better job making it easier for people to get accommodations for their accessibility needs, which was fantastic. Everything from, you know, having somebody in the class to take notes for you, having somebody, you know, I don't know, do different things. They just had like a bunch of different stuff. I don't want to get into specifics. So I don't want to like, you know, but it's not really my place. But they had a lot of stuff. So I would say absolutely yes. I have seen at BDSM events, I have seen more people using mobility aids, more people with service animals, more people that are in the deaf community every single year coming in and participating in our events, more people with different visual impairments, people who are blind, all across the board. I've seen more and more of that every year coming out to our events, which is amazing, and I'm so happy to see that, more so than I like would typically see in everyday life in other hobby groups, at events, at restaurants, going about my daily existence. And so I definitely know that for those people, it's a very healing experience, and they seem to get a lot out of it, right? And I've even seen classes be much more explicit about talking about things like, hey, if you both have mobility limitations, here's what you can do to do like close impact play if you're both side by side in a wheelchair. Like, that is amazing. That is not something that would have been explicitly talked about in a class like probably 5 years ago, unless the person had a partner who was using a wheelchair and they had some kind of personal experience to draw from. So I'm really enjoying getting to see that. And I think that there's a podcast that I have not listened to in a very, very long time, but it's like a sex and disability podcast. And I know that they have episodes they've talked about kink before. And I certainly know people that have had, like, actually, one of the first stories I ever heard from Lee Harrington was in a class that Lee gave where he talked about, like, tying somebody up who's in a wheelchair. I keep feeling like going back to wheelchairs for an example, but I feel like it's something that's, like, very concrete that, like, everyone sort of, like, understands, like, what that means and what that is. So I kind of keep going back to that. But I don't mean to, like, you know, cut that out as like the be all end all example, because it's like so many different ways that, you know, disability can affect you and like impact your participation in the community and ability to find partners and whatever. But like that was like, I was like, oh yeah, I guess that is something that could happen. A lot of people find it very comforting and very fun. I definitely saw lots of people topping and bottoming in the dungeon over the weekend, you know, with their service animals close by, you know, having space, you know, for the wheelchair next to the spanking bench. It was fantastic. It was amazing. And I was really glad to see it. I know I've seen people, you know, be suspended. I've seen people do all kinds of different kinks, no matter what it is that, you know, they've got going on. And yeah. But I would be cautious about treating anything as universal. Everything, as I say, is individual. Some people, especially if you have a history of like medical trauma, a lot of BDSM activities could potentially be triggering because of a history of being, as you know, subject to discrimination or being medicalized. That's definitely a factor. I don't know, like, because I don't really do medical play. I'm not sure how common that is like a thing that is like an impediment for participation in BDSM, is like that anxiety and that fear being there. But certainly that can be a possibility. But yeah. I think that our community, to be clear, our community still needs to do a lot of work around, and I need to talk to somebody about this. They're kind of doing more DEI type stuff, for event coordinators and volunteers, but my experience with that has been, it's been exclusively race-based, which I feel like is a conversation that needs to be had. But that's like leaving out a huge percentage of our community. Like, how do you like navigate having conversations in like a trauma-informed way? That's really important. What do you do if somebody walks into your dungeon and they have a visual impairment, or they're blind, or they're deaf? Like, a lot of people do not interact with people with disabilities on a daily basis, and they literally do not know what the fuck to do. So in order to avoid embarrassment, they don't talk to people. They don't have conversations. They don't know how to approach people. And that leaves people feeling really isolated and alone, and they hate having to, a lot of them that I've talked to, they hate having to be the one to go up and be like, hey, poke, poke, help me. I need you to do this thing. Because people just don't know what to do. They don't know to do anything. And I feel like it would be really good for events to have some more training around that, like train their volunteers and DMs and their like higher up staff as well on like how to navigate certain things because people just don't know how to have those conversations. And frankly, it's embarrassing. It makes me embarrassed that our community is trying so dang hard to be better, and then like is missing out on what I think are some pretty glaring like social issues of like how to actually make things inclusive. But that's sort of my own thing there. The overlap between people who have EDS and people who love rope is bigger than people might think. Yes, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that have EDS that like rope specifically. You are totally right on that. That's true. Oh, sorry, that was my chair slid. I have like adjustable armrests, and like I used it as leverage to stand up a little bit straighter. I'm new to this lifestyle and was wondering if energy exchange is something that's, it says accepted. I'm assuming you mean accepted like ACC, like as in, or maybe you mean expected as opposed to accepted. No, nothing should be expected as a default other than negotiations and consent. Everything else should be open, on the table, take it or leave it if you want to. A lot of people really enjoy playing with energy, but a lot of people are like, I'm just here to have fun. I don't want to be too serious. I don't want to look into your soul. I'm not trying to have some kind of spiritual awakening where I align my chakras. I just want to have a fun time, and that's that. So no, it's optional. Everything should be optional. Basically, if anyone you're having a conversation with ever tells you if you do BDSM, you have to do this, or everyone plays like this, or everyone does this thing, they are lying. The only statement that would ever be like that would be like, you have to have consent before you play with someone, or you should negotiate before playing with a new person. Those are pretty much the only universal statements. Now, you can say that maybe certain things are more common, that certain things are more broadly appealing, or maybe are bad ideas, right? Like I can tell you, it's probably a bad idea to hit somebody on the spine with a baseball bat. That's like probably a bad idea. But that is not the same thing as saying no one would ever use a baseball bat for any reason in any kink scene. There's a difference there. So hopefully that helps you. Do you have any advice on getting a partner who has trust issues from past trauma to communicate in a total power exchange dynamic? Holistic mental health care. No, I'm being a little flippant, but like, I completely understand, especially as a partner, you want to help your person maybe process some things and feel more comfortable doing stuff. And you might feel like it's you, and if you just do the right things, you can make them be comfortable. But it's not really you. If they're not set up to have their own healthcare and to have someone to help them work through stuff, you can keep throwing stuff at the wall as much as you want, but it's not going to actually change the underlying factors there. So I'd really recommend, if they have the ability to access therapy, which I know in the United States is not going to be an option for everybody, at least not traditional in-person mental health care, but you have options for that, right? You can do in-person traditional therapy. You can do online therapy. You can look for sliding scale therapy if you're on a reduced income. You can look for group therapy, especially for things like DBT. Tons of options for group therapy. It's going to give you a lot of really great skills to work with there. Support groups in general. Those are also another really good option for people. You can also look for reduced fee things if you live near a college or you live near a university that has a program for social workers or therapists or psychologists. Oftentimes, they will have reduced cost therapy available for trainees. Obviously, maybe not getting the highest quality level of care there. I would argue if you're dealing with trauma, I would way rather have a newer therapist than an older one, because newer therapists, newer social workers are being trained in newer models of interacting with their clients around discussions of trauma in a way that somebody who has like 25 plus years of experience probably doesn't have or isn't getting, unless they're looking out for that kind of information on purpose. They may, like, I think actually the trade-off, you're probably getting a good deal seeing a brand new, enthusiastic, non-burned out, intern therapist versus seeing somebody who's been doing it for 20 years is kind of like, whatever, I've seen it all. You know what I mean? So you have options, you have ways. There's also lots of guidebooks, lots of like individual like things you can do in terms of like apps, workbooks, flashcards, other things you can do that are more self-directed if you want to have some tools for working through that trauma. Where the power exchange comes in for developing trust and for BDSM, and for being able to have conversations, is to direct your partner towards those resources. Like you can say, hey, I really want to have this kind of dynamic with you. I know it's also really important for you too. However, we do need to be able to communicate. I think we both know it's kind of been a problem in the past. So before we proceed to do this thing, I'm going to encourage you to do this thing, right? Or go through this workbook, or read this book, or do these flashcards, or do this exercise in this app for 30 days, whatever it is. And then we can check in. We'll see if some benchmark things have changed in terms of our communication, and then we can reevaluate from there. But I don't want you to feel pressured as a dominant person to feel like you have to dominate somebody that you can't really communicate with because you feel like you don't have like a good enough reason not to. Communication is paramount above everything else. And it really sucks to not be able to have the relationship you want to have because you can't communicate with somebody. And I feel like it's more irresponsible to pursue too high of a level of a relationship when you don't have the communication as the foundation already there. And I'm not saying you should get rid of your TP. I'm not saying you should end your relationship by any means, because that can be really like even worse for this than continuing it. But I think that you need to be like very, very cautious about the directions you go in if communication is being an issue. Like, I wouldn't want to, as a dom or a top, I would not want to have a TPE relationship with somebody that I felt like I could not have a frank conversation with because they were dealing with certain trauma that simply had not been resolved at that point. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I would really do to kind of work on like trust issues specifically and like developing more trust with somebody. But when you're dealing with trauma, it goes beyond just the, like, we trust people who trust us first. Like, even if you are giving that trust first, if somebody is dealing with trauma, they're going to be very reluctant to give it back, even if you're giving it first. So that's like where kind of the mental health thing steps into it, having that robust, holistic mental health care, or at least doing something in that direction to resolve it. The thing I would maybe look for, I know I'm very skeptical of EMDR. I don't want to rain on anybody's parade if anyone in here is like a really big EMDR proponent. I'm very skeptical of EMDR. I feel like when I've talked to therapists that do EMDR, they kind of treat it as like the WD-40 of therapeutic practices, where it's like, oh, it's so good for trauma. It's so good for OCD. It's so good for BPD. It's so good for bipolar. It's so good for the depression and anxiety. It's like, there's no way that one model of therapy could be good for literally everything. Like, if it's good for literally everything, I'm going to be real skeptical. Also, I think a lot of it that works is probably the aspects of it that borrow from, like, it's like, I don't know. My hot take is I feel like EMDR is kind of more of a purple hat therapy, like it's like narrative therapy or something that's kind of has a sort of another thing built on top of it that makes people think it's more efficacious than it really is. But y'all are not here for my therapeutic modality hot takes. But I am somebody who's really into like more like DBT, MBT, RO, DBT. That's kind of like more my wheelhouse of things that I like. IFS I really like as well, which is like completely the opposite side of the spectrum. But yeah, that's sort of my 2 cents on that. And then I would specifically ask, if you are encouraging this person to pursue therapy and talk to a therapist, like setting up very early on in the session so that way they can put this in the treatment plan of like, one key thing that we want to work on as a benchmark for working through trauma is developing like more trust in intimate partnerships. And that can be something that a good therapist will be able to be like, oh yeah, we can totally work on that. Let's like focus on that for a couple sessions. And that would be good to do. I don't know if there's any like specific books necessarily that like talk about like recovering from like relationship trauma and like learning to trust again. At least anything I read enough to be like, this is like the good one that I think is like a good book to go off of to read. Oh, that's awesome. I hope that goes really well for you. Thank you, Andrew, for letting me know. Andrew says that I have fun news. I applied for the creative assistant position for sub in the city. Well, you have my vote. If it's a voting thing, like American Idol. Do a trust fall exercise. Sounds silly, but my partner makes me do it sometimes, and it genuinely helps for some reason. I mean, hey, if it works, it works. Don't knock until you try it, I guess. Sometimes actually having like a really like, I mean, this is why companies pay to do like physical activities for team building exercises, because having a really concrete in-person physical trust thing can be like, whoa, like, okay, like this person literally makes me feel safe. I don't feel safe doing a trust fall, but I also have a fear of heights and falling, so like that's it's a little outside of maybe the typical the range of people would do that for. At least have experiences. But I am here for your therapeutic modality hot takes. Well, you know, I honestly the day, no matter if something works for you, I don't fucking care if it's placebo. I don't care if it's a purple hat therapy. I get a little miffed if somebody treats it as like the be all end all best therapy ever, when it's like, it's not really though. It's like there's so many options out there. Let people explore the options. I don't know. I feel like EMDR and like IFS both have practitioners that are like really like, they kind of drunk the Kool-Aid. Like it's like the best thing ever that's ever existed in all of therapy. And it's like, what is it though? People get a little too much into it. It's kind of concerning. Anyways, I do wonder actually, I might have a book. I might have a book. I mean, there definitely are books out there. If that's more, without knowing kind of the specific nature of the trauma you're dealing with. There's like, I love you, but I don't trust you. There's rebuilding trust. There's whole again, healing your heart and rediscovering your true self after toxic relationships. That actually sounds like a really good book. I'm gonna have to, sold me on the byline. Sold me on that one. Daring to trust, opening ourselves to real love and intimacy. I feel like I've at least read part of that one. I feel like it's pretty good. There's also lots of audiobooks for a lot of this as well. Oh, this is the person who wrote Psychopath Free. Wait, is this person actually like a therapist? I like am very skeptical of reading like relationship and help books from people that are not like, I'm like, who is this Jackson McKenzie person? Who are you people? Oh, his full bio is literally just, he's a young gay guy who loves cats and Christmas. He works with a tech company in New England. Okay, never mind. I'm not reading this book. Never mind. Never mind. Not authoritative enough. Speaking of hot takes, I guess. Tongue Tied is also a really good book, yeah. Purple Hat Therapy is a reference to, it's, I don't know if it's necessarily like, it's about pseudoscience per se, but let's say you were doing like CBT. Ha ha ha, very funny. Everyone make your jokes now. You're doing CBT, and then you kept doing CBT, and then you added a purple hat on top, and then that was also effective. And then you ascribed the effectiveness to the purple hat. It wasn't the purple hat, it was the underlying things, the CBT in this case, that made it effective, not the purple hat. And I think that there's a lot of therapy that's like that, where like, oh, it's so good, it's so amazing. But it's like, well, it's because it follows the same underlying principles as this other thing And the things that are new about this modality don't really actually have any effect or difference on the outcome. They are mostly garbage. I try to stick to ones that are like mostly written by like marriage and family therapists or like people that work with like whatever specific population I'm reading about. I have found those ones to be quite helpful, but when you're getting into general self-help on relationships and like getting over breakups, you get into a lot of stuff that's like written by like random lay people that are like, I just want to write a book, and like what they suggest is not necessarily evidenced in any meaningful way. It's just conjecture, and I don't find that to be helpful. I like my material to be evidence-based. Hear me out. Sticking 2 straws in your teeth, sucking gel out of a cup so you can do it the fastest. Oh, yeah, like see how long somebody can, who's the fastest at like chugging a shot or like doing a kegger? Yeah. Okay, cool. I like that. It's, I mean, if you're having a party with adult beverages, you could do it with Jello shots too. That would be fun. That would be great. Technically, any of these events can spread COVID. So if we're talking about doing any kind of group activity in a closed environment, all of it can spread COVID. So, if you're eating food at a party or drinking beverages, you are being exposed to contracting an illness. I'm sorry. This is why I don't go to parties. Does anyone have any experience with those sensory deprivation tanks? My therapist suggested I try one to help relax. I'm booked for next week and I'm wondering what to expect. Oh, you mean like the float tank things? You know, I wanted to try one of those when I still lived in Seattle, but I never ended up going. I think like Float Tank is the brand. I haven't been to one. I was worried it would freak me out and I would get really claustrophobic, so I ended up not going through with it, which I'm not typically, like, I like being really like tightly swaddled up in bondage and like, you know, covered in a blanket, like I'm a bird being covered by like a blanket in the cage, you know, like I find that to be very cozy, but there's something about being in a pod floating in water, that like especially tepid water that like I don't find appealing. If it was like warm water, like, you know, somewhere between like a bathtub and a hot tub, I think I'd be more down. But like being in just like zero sensory experience, like I don't know if that would be good for me, to be honest. I don't know. I would love to know if people have tried that before. I kind of love that as like an idea to like make your submissive go do, as like a, we can't do anything explicitly kinky, but we want to do some kind of like power exchangey stuff. So like you're going to go book a float tank sensory deprivation session. And while you're in there, you're going to think about me. You know, I feel like that would be fun to do. That'd be a fun idea. All right. We have 10 minutes left. So get in your questions now. Use your super chats if you would like to. That is the best way to make sure I read your question as we are wrapping up here today. If not, I'm going to try to speed round through a couple if I can. You called me out. Why do I feel cut out with your nerd joke? I'm not a nerd, but all nerdy things I like. Yeah, exactly. If you like all the nerdy things, are you sure you're not a nerd? Was the nerd thing supposed to be a secret? Oh man, I'm in trouble with the counselor of Kinksters. Or the council of Kinksters. It's an open secret. Invite only. Thicken red juice or high C or red food coloring in water with cornstarch or flour and heat. The thick red juice or faux blood can be drizzled wherever blood would be appropriate. Yes. With that, I feel like that might stain, but also anything red would probably stain. So, duly noted. Good idea. I only just started realizing that people in my local munch actually like me and consider me a friend. I'm not used to this. Oh, hellhound. Aw. I know what that's like. I'm with ya. That's so sweet, though. I'm happy for you. I know it's like hard to, it's like people can be like, this feels like a humble brag thing, like in the way that like, oh, I'm bad at accepting compliments sounds like a humble brag. But like genuinely, if you grow up and you're not used to having friends and people who like being around you, it is a completely new thing to be in the community and be like, people like want to get to know me and hang out with me. They want to know what I have to say and what I think about things. That legitimately can be a big change. Vampire party, put out some faux wooden stakes, a large straight pretzels. Oh, I love that. Do like, you know, like I mean, this is like kind of getting to a little party sort of deal, but you know how like people make like graveyard pudding, right? Where it's got like the chocolate pudding and like the Oreo crumbles and the worms and like the Oreo, headstones. You know, you could do that. You could have little like shovels in there, like with little pretzels. That would be cute. That would be adorable. Jars or bottles labeled as holy water, but it's like Sprite or Kool-Aid. Yeah. Oh, like get just little. You can definitely get like really cute little. I'm sure on Amazon or Etsy you can get them in bulk, like little like Halloween themed drink containers. Yeah, that would be cute to give to people. I cannot explain simulated waterboarding. I will say what I was thinking of when I said that was a wet cloth over a nose and a mouth. A lot of people do stuff in, well, not a lot of people. There are some people in kink that will say they do waterboarding and they do it on a routine basis. Almost none of them are actually doing waterboarding. Like very few people are legitimately doing waterboarding. I don't recommend doing it. I feel like if you're getting to that point in your edge play when you're like, I want to be like, the only kinks I want to engage in are being choked until I passed out. I want to be buried alive in a coffin. I want to do waterboarding. Like, if you're getting into like really extreme stuff like that, that might just be your kink. I might also advise taking a little bit of a step back because you might be dealing, and this is not me judging anybody, I'm just saying you could be dealing with some sub-frenzy type energy of like how exciting doing really edgy, intense stuff is. And you may not be fully thinking through the ramifications of play like that, where you're doing really intense play that can affect your brain and body and, you know, long-term things. Like, just be cautious, okay? People do it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea to do it every weekend or every month. Just be aware. Do what you want to do. Just maybe let my vote be in the jar of caution. That's all I'm saying. Ooh, I like that. At the dungeon I just went to, there's two parties at. One very light, and the second night was taboo or intense. We have 3 color dots for our name tags: red, yellow, green. Like stay away till let's talk. That's great. I think that's really simple, non-invasive. You don't have to do anything to do it. I feel like that's great. Love it. That would be fantastic to see that at more events. I don't know if I should touch that question with a 10-foot pole. I'm going to touch it with a 5-foot pole and very vaguely answer. If you are in an age gap relationship that would have been against the laws of your state when it was initiated and you engaged in intercourse, that was probably not great. If you're still in a healthy relationship, good for you. I'm glad that worked out. I can say from my own personal experience and from people I know that were in relationships with people that we were in age gaps as teenagers, most of the time it doesn't. And a lot of times it's not something that I would ever want to encourage because it can go sideways more often than not. So that's my take on that. Great for you if you're still in a happy relationship. That is not typically the norm. And don't do anything that would be illegal or get you in trouble. And for the love of God, don't send nudes. That's the other thing. Don't do that either. So that's my advice. The legality, if the legality is questionable, it's not really my area to comment on whether or not it's a good or bad idea. I'm starting in BDSM, and I really like bondage. Do you have any tips for solo exploration in bondage like shibari? I may have misspelled that. No, you got it right. Shibari. Spell that correctly, Bill. I really like, and I always recommend people check out Shibari Study. They are fantastic. They are the best quality online, on-demand videos available for rope bondage, very affordable membership. I swear to God, I'm not sponsored. I would take a sponsorship if they asked me to. Don't worry about that. But just pro bono, on my own time, just putting it out there as a person who genuinely enjoys their work. Shibari Study is fantastic. They are really, really good. They have a lot of the tutorials are focused on tying on other people, but they do have a lot of stuff in there that is for tying on yourself as well. Shay Tiziano has a relatively recently published book that I think is on self-suspension. I'm assuming that that book is also going to have other material leading up to that, like chest harnesses, leg ties, etc., that are meant to be done on yourself. And there's tons of resources online on YouTube for self-tied things as well. There's also places like Bondage Tuition and the Duchy that also offer free resources for tying ties. And almost all of those, with the exception of like some chest harnesses, can be adapted for tying on yourself. So lots of resources, but Shibari Study is literally my favorite. So that would be what I would recommend. And they do have quite a few like free episodes. They have, I think, some kind of trial offer you can try as well, if you want to just check them out for a bit, but they're fantastic. All right, I'm going to try to do one more question here, and then we're going to wrap up. I love going over contracts. Following them? No, only discussing. Yes, exactly. Some people are like that. Some people are like that. I could probably actually make a knockoff version of the Jeopardy theme song. I could probably commission someone to do like a not quite Jeopardy theme song. I don't think it would be that difficult. Contracts need an enforcement clause. That's very true. The person who does not follow the contract gets tied up plus 5 to 10 swats of the paddle, or denying them orgasms for a certain period of time, or, yeah, exactly. If you don't have an enforcement mechanism in your contract, you should definitely add one and then execute on it. That's your enforcement mechanism tool as the dominant partner, is to enforce what you have said you will enforce, because they may just be testing you. But if you're the submissive, you may not have a built-in enforcement clause, because that's not typically something that would be included. I actually don't think it's a terrible idea for a submissive to have an enforcement clause if their dominant partner doesn't act on their end of the bargain of keeping track of rules or rewards or punishments. I'm not sure exactly what that would look like, but I feel like it's a good idea. Like, at the very least, maybe you should say something like, for the enforcement clause, if the submissive finds that the dominant is not executing on items 1A through 22B of this contract for a duration longer than, 5 days without advance notice or negotiation, then the submissive shall have permission to, in plain English, talk to the dominant partner about their shortcomings, and then like whatever other enforcement thing, right? Like, these certain rules will no longer be enforced until such time as the dominant partner can enforce them, or like whatever. Something like that, maybe, I feel like is a good idea. But good point, actually. I am working on a sample contract. I'm working on way too much stuff right now. I'm working on some text guides for things. I am working on my own example contract of things that I think are important to fill in a contract that hopefully splits a difference between like overly casual and like complete legalese. We'll see how that goes. But I'm excited about it. I love working on text-based stuff. I love designing stuff. This is like very fun for my brain. Okay, one more question. Names referring to small non-human animals are kind of underrated, like insect names with a cute twist. True, though. Imagine being called somebody's hamster. Imagine being called somebody's chinchilla. That would be funny. I would laugh. I would go, ha ha ha, so funny. I do not only answer super chats, I answer questions in the order they come in, unless you use a super chat, in which case I will read the highlighted one immediately. Yes, you can have online DS relationships. You are correct that it is more difficult for most people because it's harder to enforce things, as we were just talking about, but it is possible for some people's brains, they actually like it more than having an in-person DS relationship. I'm not that person. I love in-person stuff. I love the energy of a party. I love the energy of a dinner party, being, doing DS-y stuff. I love all that. But for some people, online DS does work. Even if it's not exactly the same, it's its own unique special thing. Alrighty. I do not know what the taco balls are. I have no idea. I want to be somebody's chinchilla. Same, though. Imagine being that soft and fluffy. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Wouldn't that be amazing? Okay, that's going to be it for tonight, y'all. I got to go pick up my groceries. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this Friday evening. Nothing big coming up that I'm aware of other than the Dom Sub Summit is happening from the 8th to the 11th. If you want to check it out, you can go to domsubdynamics.com/EV, and that'll get you there. You can go to your free spot that is coming up next week, and videos coming up this week. Normal schedule for the foreseeable future. Streams on Mondays and Fridays. No big upcoming events. Starting in May onward, though, we're going to be cooking with gas, okay? We're going to be doing online classes. We're going to be teaching at conventions. We're going to be the 2024. All right. I tried this in 2020. Praying to God that the bird flu that's happening. Great time to go vegan, by the way. Bird flu is going around. Maybe don't buy eggs. Just saying. Just be cautious. If you don't know what I'm talking about and you're in anywhere in the world, please Google bird flu. I don't want you to panic, but just be aware of it because it looks like it's going to be bad. You just be aware of that. Assuming that the bird flu doesn't become a second pandemic, 2024, year of making friends, year of teaching in in-person conventions, year of doing just more everything, making everything squeaky, shiny, professional. It's going to be great. Bandini is sleeping in her bed around the corner. She hid from me. I did not set up the camera in the right place for me to be able to get it kind of wedged over there, but next time we will. All right. Yes. Save your question for next time. Hopefully I'll see you there. And anyways, that's it. Good night.